The new 1420 WBSM.
Good evening and welcome to Spooky Southcoast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin, Matt Costa, and Stephanie Burke. Science advisor Matt Moniz is not here tonight. Hey, Matt, what microphone should I turn off?
Which one?
Yeah, what number is that?
That is number 3.
Number
It
3.
should be number 4, but it's number 3.
Yeah, okay, I just pulled it down, so there we go. So now I can still hear you talking.
Yep, we're excellent.
Right. Let me turn that light on. Turn that light on. It went out again. It's still way better than the board we used to have.
Those are just for aesthetics.
I just don't want to leave a hot mic open when I don't need to. But I'm going to eventually I'm like the only person that can't remember those numbers, by the way. It seems like nobody else has a problem with that but me. But is that my close-up camera?
This one?
Huh? This one there?
I don't know what that one is.
I just want to know so that I can make sure that I put the Subway product placement facing the right way. There we go.
Perfect.
Because I'm
Eat
going
fresh.
I'm going broke every week, dropping $2 on that soda before the show. So this way here, now if I show the Subway logo, then when I walk in there, they should just give me the soda for free.
I like that idea.
We need to work on this. Sponsorship deals. We need more sponsorship deals with food.
Can we at least do like milkshakes or something?
You know, at this point in the game, we've been doing this show now. We just passed our 9th anniversary last week. Happy anniversary, guys. And to all of you out there in spooky South Coast land. So we just passed our 9th anniversary. I think we've achieved, at this point, some level of, what's the word? Credibility that if we sell ourselves out a little bit, I don't think the audience will begrudge us too much.
No.
So let's work on some deals here. Let's work on bringing in some ads. Basically just bringing in some food.
Right.
I don't say no to food.
Because it'd be nice, it'd be nice to have a little bit of food here in the studio. Maybe get some ghost hunting equipment, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the food first.
That's what comes with 9 years worth of.
I'm opposed to the milkshakes, though. I'm opposed to it.
What are you, lactose intolerant?
It's the boys. They'll be in our yard.
Oh right, yeah. It will bring it.
That will be awkward.
Yeah.
I understand.
Too many boys in the yard.
How about free cats?
No, we don't need any more of those.
Forever Paws. Are they still a sponsor?
That we still do things with Forever Paws.
Perfect.
But I think we have enough, just enough animals between all of us.
Kittens for everyone.
You have like what, 1,000?
I don't have 1,000. I have 4.
That's more than
5 if you count my husband.
Yes, he's listening right now, saying, "Move on from cats. Please change the subject before she gets any ideas." Well, we are here to talk about the paranormal, kinda, as we are each and every Saturday night, and we are excited tonight because we have a big guest joining us in just a little bit. It's going to be the return of Chris Balzano. He hasn't been on the program in quite a while. He actually stepped away from the paranormal field for a bit because, life gets in the way sometimes of your hobbies and your passions, and real life will intrude on your research, and so he had to take a step back for a little while, all kinds of things going on. Now he's dipping his toes back into the paranormal water, and he's going to do so right here on Spooky South Coast, because tonight we're going to be talking about, I don't know if you guys heard, there's a football game tomorrow.
No, I don't think I've heard.
The New England Patriots are going to take on the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl tomorrow, and so we've been talking about this, and I've been trying to get predictions, Stephanie, from people. I didn't get any. Nobody is, if I talk to people, just random football fans on the street or people that I know and say, hey, what's going to be the final score of the game? I get all these people telling me, Patriots are going to win 47-10, picking these ridiculous scores and what have you. But if I ask anybody that is a self-professed psychic,
they won't do it.
They will not. And, I don't know why that is, because normally they have no problem. We always do these silly throwaway stories of the newspaper where we will interview a local psychic, and the psychic knows that it's all in fun. We're not looking for a serious prediction. Your career isn't made or broken on what you say. But it seems like this one, maybe it's because of the closely matched teams that are involved, Maybe the fact that it's such a tight game in terms of the betting odds, that maybe they're a little bit shy.
I want to probably guarantee you out there that most people that spend their times doing psychic readings don't watch football.
Yeah.
What I've noticed, at least.
I'd say
I'm
a good
little
portion of
different,
them, sure.
But they're not really into that sort of thing. I think it's more of a fear of being wrong and it hurting their credibility.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking that it probably is. And any of you out there, whether you're psychic or not, during the course of the discussion, if you would like to share your predictions for the Super Bowl, you can either call us 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420, or you can tweet it to us on Twitter. You can send it to @SpookySC, or just put it out there on Twitter and hashtag it with Spooky Live. That's how you can interact with us, especially if you're watching on Spooky TV at SpookySouthcoast.com, which, if you've never experienced that before, I know we have a lot of people. We keep getting more and more new listeners over the last few weeks. And if you've never enjoyed the program before, you probably won't now. No, but if you've never enjoyed the show before, you can always watch what we're doing here in the studio by going to SpookySouthcoast.com, clicking on Spooky TV, and we have cameras set up all around the studio here, and you can see it right on your screen. There's information there. The phone numbers are always under there, the Twitter, guest information, and on the side, you'll see the chat icon, the chat option, which is really just an aggregate of any tweets that have Spooky Live, hashtag Spooky Live. So if you put that in your tweets, we'll be able to see it during the course of the show. Sorry, all that soda. So if you want to get into the discussion that way, you can do so as well. And, of course, you can email us, spookycrew@SpookySouthcoast.com. And I'm excited to have Chris back because we're going to talk to him. I want to talk to him from a football fan's perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, he loves the Patriots. So we'll talk about it a little bit from that angle, too. We'll get his thoughts on the game. But I want to find out what he thinks. Because when we were talking about this, and Stephanie and I have been talking about this topic for a couple of weeks now, and we were saying, we got to get somebody that can come on and talk about, you know, all these athletes that say thanks to God, or all these writers that say that it's a team of fate, a team of destiny, whichever team it may be. And do these higher powers, these beings, these deities, do they care about what goes on in something as mundane in a football game? Or is it the matter of that is why they exist? They exist to have that influence in something as mundane in a football game because they're in all aspects of life. So it's a little bit of a heady topic, but I was like, who are we going to get to be able to talk about this? And in the back of my mind, all I kept thinking was, I hope I can get Chris Balzano to come on and talk about this. In years past, this would always be the subject matter where he would be our go-to guy. And I knew that he wanted to kind of come back and start getting involved a little bit more. And I was like, oh, if we can just make this work, it'll be a perfect fit. And it turns out I actually didn't get to ask him until just the other day because of all the crazy stuff going on with the storm and everything. So I finally remembered to ask him, and he said that he will join us. So we'll break all that down with him, a patented Balzano breakdown, as we used to call them in the old days here.
I haven't witnessed one yet.
I was hoping that was going to come back.
I don't have the snatchy music though. I gotta find that. I don't even know where to find that anymore at this point. But
yeah, I don't know.
We will.
All our stuff is everywhere.
But before we get into the discussion, I'm gonna do one quick Week in Weird story. One story that I just want to share with you guys.
Okay.
And if you haven't seen it already, and share with the spooky. I talked about it this morning on the Tim Weisberg Show, which airs Saturdays from 6 to 9 on the new 1420 WBSM, streaming worldwide, WBSM.com, and the Radio Pup app. But before we get into that story, I want to ask you, Stephanie, you had mentioned how people that have psychic abilities, they don't want to risk putting their credibility on the line to make a prediction of a score for a football game.
Right.
We know that psychics tell us all the time, you know, I can't predict the lottery numbers.
Right.
Would predicting the score of a football game essentially be along those same lines as predicting lottery numbers? Because you could take that information and turn it into profit.
You could or you couldn't. I mean, it depends. Depends on your intentions. If you're doing it for the intention of, you know, creating a profit, then yeah, you're not going to find out. If I'm sitting here randomly and I think this is what the score is going to be, and it happens to be it, it's just the luck of the draw.
So it may pop into your mind, even if you're not looking for it.
Right.
Can you do it as an exercise for your own abilities to say,
you
I
could.
want
Absolutely.
and how would you do it if that was the case? Do you And I don't know, have you ever actually tried yourself to envision what the score of a game might be, something along those lines, just to see if you could?
No, but different exercises along those lines, absolutely.
If you were, and I'm not going to ask you, but if I was going to ask you, you know, what's going to be the final score of the Super Bowl tomorrow, would you go through a process of just kind of like imagining what the final numbers would be? Do you go through the process of imagining how the game might play? Not imagining, but, you know, visualizing how the game might play out? How much of that has to play out in your mind before you can come to that final conclusion?
It depends on the situation and the question. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it's easier. I don't know why. I really can't even tell you how I connect. That's, I think, the most common question that I always get is, how does it work? Or what is it like? And it's been this way my whole life. I didn't go through a process of like normalcy and then all of a sudden, oh, this is how the process works. I never broke it down logically to figure out exactly what my brain's doing at that time. It's just something that I've always had, so I don't really know how it happens, but I guess the best way to explain it is if you ask me a question, the first thing that I see in my, what they technically call it is third eye, mind's eye, what I see in my head, the first thing that comes to mind is usually the answer.
Well, I was talking with somebody recently who was asking me about, you know, how to develop these abilities.
Right.
And I know that we've talked in the past, and the general consensus seems to be that everybody can kind of get to that point. You just have to be willing to work at it. Some people don't have to work at it.
Right.
Some people, it's already there. And so the correlation that I made for this person was look at it like this. Look at it as if, you know, psychic ability is running water. And for some of us, we need to build the sink from scratch. We need to put together all the pipes, put together all the plumbing, connect it all up, put the faucet in, and then turn it on.
Right.
Some of us just have the faucet on already, and we have to learn how to turn it off.
Yes, that could be.
So it's kind of one way or the other. You know, you're either working your way into it, or it happens to you and you have to work your way out of it.
Yeah, I spent a long time trying to block it.
Yeah, you're
And
somebody that had the faucet open and had to learn how to close it.
It's still like it takes more effort to turn it off than it does to turn it on. Or at least in my case. Other people that I've talked to that had the natural ability feel the same way, but it might not be like that for everybody. I explain it usually, it's kind of like learning how to play a musical instrument. Some people will pick it up and they'll automatically know how to play it fantastically. And the more that you practice, the better that you get. And then some people, they can practice all they want. They can play it pretty mediocre, but it'll never get further than that. The level of mediumship or psychic ability that you do reach can stall out at some point because that's just what's meant to happen.
Well, and I think that if anybody's trying to, if they were at one end or the other, if they're trying to develop the abilities, if they're trying to control the abilities, I don't think focusing on the Super Bowl is probably the best way to go one way or the other.
Nope. There's a bunch of little tricks that I teach in my classes that get people into that frame of mind without even realizing it, which kind of relaxes everybody, because when you try so hard, like asking somebody to predict the football game, usually you're going to automatically your logical mind comes into it and it completely shuts off any type of psychic ability that you might have.
I mean, that's where it would be hard for me. You know, not that I have any abilities or think that I have any abilities, but that's where it would be hard for me if I was trying to, because I look at games from a football writer's perspective. So I'm looking at it as a fan of the game, as a fan of the team,
Right.
which I have to, you know, it's kind of the same thing for me. Like I have to learn how to put my fandom of the team aside when I'm covering said team.
Right.
And it's hard to do with the Patriots, with the Celtics over the years, because, you know, I love those teams. So by the time I'm sitting in the press box,
Right.
you know, I go through such an experience that it's almost like I'm desensitizing myself to it as we go along. But I can't turn off that analyst side of it either if I'm just watching a game as a fan. Tomorrow night, I don't have to write anything, so far as I know, and I'm holding the paper to that. But I don't have to write anything. I can actually just watch the game with the family and
Which is
enjoy
nice.
it as a game. But I'm not going to be able to turn off that analytical part of it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the same thing kind of vice versa. If I was, you know, covering the game and covering it analytically, I wouldn't be able to turn off the fan part. I would just have to damper it a little bit. So I think we all kind of go through the same process. It's just we're not doing it in relation to the same idea. You know, we go through it in all of our lives in different ways. not about psychic abilities, but about whatever it is that we feel that we're strong in.
Yeah, it's a subject that we could probably go on and on about for the next 3 hours.
And we will, at least for the next hour and a half.
Right.
Coming up in just a bit with our guest, Chris Balzano, who'll be joining us in just a few minutes. But before we get to that point, I have to share this story with you guys. And we'll do it as a formal A Week in Weird segment.
More bad news.
Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
The Week in Weird. Well, you can donate blood, plasma, eggs, even sperm. Why not poop?
What?
Thanks to a new nonprofit organization called Open Biome, you can cash in your poop to the tune of $13,000 a year.
Really?
What?
How
Yes.
much poop would you have to produce?
Well-
Because, let me tell you.
Funny you should ask that, young Matthew Costa, because this company, Open Biome, which opened in 2013, was created because there's a certain bacterial infection that some people are afflicted with called C. difficile.
Ugh.
And you're familiar with C. difficile?
Yes.
Okay, and apparently it can get to the point where it's so painful you can't even leave the house. You know, you're just the quality of life is terrible, and if you want to treat it, you have to go into an antibiotic regimen that will essentially, just pump you full of antibiotics so much that you won't be able to use them for any other kind of infection. Anything else that happens, it won't matter. You become immune to these antibiotics so fast. So they found a new way of treating it. They take healthy fecal matter from somebody else and put it into the gut of the person that suffers from C. difficile.
Okay.
They've done this. They've done this about 2,000 times in 185 hospitals over the country, around the country. It's working. It's working. What they
That's
can
gross.
do is there's different ways they can do it. They can either give you endoscopy, which I assume is they're gonna put somebody else's poop up inside you. Nasal tubes, which probably isn't pleasant enough, just having those tubes shoved down your nose before you even realize what it is flowing through them. And finally, swallowed capsules, which might be my preferred method, believe it or not.
Poop pills.
I
Poop
don't think I
pills.
could put that in my mouth. I think I go for the endoscopy.
Well, we spent about 45 minutes this morning saying poop pills on the air over and over again.
Did
So,
you?
yes, it was. So, here's what they pay. You ready for this?
Hashtag poop pills.
$40 a sample with a $50 bonus if you can come
Really?
in 5 days a week.
Really?
Now, I can go in 7 days a week.
Ew.
So, listen, that's
Does it
200.
have to be a certain weight?
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. We're getting there. That's $250 for a week of donations or $13,000 a year. Now, if you can dump off a 50-gram
Huh. Don't bother.
sample,
I see what you
that
did
will
there.
take care of one person. All the way up to a 450-gram sample, which can take care of 10 people who suffer from C. difficile. So if you go and take a huge dump,
Yep.
you are helping out 10 people. You could single-handedly save the world. Just from the
If your
one
poop is healthy.
One poop at a time.
just from the post spooky Southcoast Taco Bell trips alone, you could save the world.
Taco
But
Bell.
that's the key point, Stephanie, is that you have to be healthy, and that's the problem. Is you don't just have to be healthy; you have to be really healthy.
Right.
So far, they've had about 1,000 potential donors who have expressed interest over the last 2 years, and only about 4% of those people actually were able to be donors
Yeah, you have
of
to be
fecal
perfect
matter.
health.
And
4% are super duper poopers.
Oh my god.
he's a super duper I wish I had that YouTube video cranked up. So, but the screening process costs about $5,000 per person. So $5,000 just to find out if your poop passes muster.
What is this article? I think I need to send it to.
It's from the Washington Post.
No
It's
way.
on my Twitter. I tweeted it out
Legit.
earlier today.
It's legit.
Oh my god.
So here you go. This is your chance to make $13,000 a year just by pooping. I've been doing that for 37 years for free.
Right. And you just flush it.
Right. I'm flushing away money. I'm literally throwing money down the toilet. So I'm thinking to myself, I have to relocate to wherever this place is so I can be
Right.
a poop donor.
Where is it?
Medford, Massachusetts.
not.
I don't even have to move.
Really?
Well, anything but my bowels. So I could actually be a professional pooper
Pooper.
for a living.
You would so do that too. Could you do
I
anything for a
absolutely
buck?
would. I would. I absolutely would. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to contact
Ew.
Open Biome.
Please do.
We want to have somebody from Open Biome on the Saturday morning show. We'll find out more about what this whole program is about. I'm going to ask them not only to... I want them to bring me a poop pill, and I'm going to take it on the air. I'm going to swallow a
you're
poop pill
not.
on the radio. Yes, I will.
No, you're not.
I
That's
will.
disgusting.
Somebody else told me, too. They're like, it can't be any worse than castor oil. I was like, I've never had castor oil, but I'll swallow a spoonful of that, too.
I don't think there's any taste to it. They probably
It's already
it's
broken
probably,
down,
like,
and
freeze-dried
it's gonna
or
it's
something.
gonna
like
taste it's gonna taste like an aspirin.
Aspirin tastes terrible, and they like.
Listen,
That's why they have bear and they coat it with sugar and stuff.
I read something, not really. Well, it's kind of related, but
Maybe poop candy.
somebody put on Facebook the other day, about eating their placenta.
I've heard that before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
I thought
health benefits to it.
Right, but I thought it wasn't legal because how do you take that out of the hospital? Blah blah blah. Somebody really posted.
Yeah, I've heard people put it in their freezer.
Yeah, they give it to you now.
And then,
You
like-
take it
Yeah,
home
but
with
it-
you.
you
then
never
on the
could
on the
before.
first birthday, they make like a soup.
That's disgusting.
It's I think it's like an Indonesian tradition or something.
So
Cambodian. Maybe.
I saw somebody put up a link to this woman who comes to your house and puts the placenta in pills for you. I'm like, that alone is disgusting
gross.
enough. That's like insides,
Yeah.
but
Do you know the let's? I like all this placenta talk.
do you? Apparently,
do
you know
that
a lot.
the artist Kesha?
Yep.
She had her dried placenta
I heard that, but I don't know if it was confirmed.
Made into a necklace. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I heard about that and I thought, I don't think I could do that, but I think I would rather swallow my own placenta than swallow somebody else's poop.
Would you swallow your own poop?
Hell no.
Oh, I see. Good enough the first time,
No.
not the second time.
No. That's disgusting. And I have clean poop, thank you.
Well,
But
I listen.
I'll get
If they wanna bring the poop pill down here, or they want to mail me one or whatever, I will take it on the air. I am not afraid. I have no problem. I will absolutely 100% do it. But I want them to test my poop too, and see. I will put it out there. I will publicly put it out there. I got a snort out of her. They don't have to do it here, but I'll put it out there that we will read the results of my poop on the air. I'm probably going to find out that I have C. difficile or something, you know.
you would know if you
as a
had
result
C. diff,
of
let
this.
me tell you.
From making fun of it, for making fun of the story now twice in
They're
one
gonna be
day.
like, you have
It's
a tape.
highly
you have a
contagious, too.
tapeworm.
Like, that's why they tell you, I don't know, like sharing bathrooms and stuff with people that have it. I had to avoid the work bathroom at my old job for that reason, because somebody had it.
Well,
It was scary.
I think we'll have to look into it a little bit and find out a little bit more for you, and we'll certainly have follow up on it.
I hope.
Oh my god.
This is one weak and weird story that I really care about.
This is one story you're gonna cling on to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna go sign himself up.
You're gonna cling
is it,
on to it.
200 bucks
Are they
a
on
week?
Twitter? Are they on
Cling
Twitter?
Cling on. No.
I see what you did there, but
Okay.
he wasn't catching on
I
right
wasn't.
away.
I wasn't catching on. Yeah.
Matt, what's the similarity between the USS Enterprise and toilet paper?
I can't remember. Is it like Klingons around your?
Both
anus?
fly around Uranus and wipe out Klingons. All right, that does it for the Week in Weird for this week. If you have a strange story that you'd like to share with us, you can do so on Twitter.
This is so
Just-
highbrow.
Just tweet it to us at SpookySC. Use the hashtag Week in Weird, and we'll share it on the air. We'll give you credit. All right. Well, let's get out of that segment as quick as we can. We do have a phone call on the line, so let's take that. Good evening. You are on Spooky South Coast. Oh, I just put you on hold again. What am I doing? Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast. How are you?
Good evening.
How are you?
That placenta, it's true. I saw it on Channel 2. It was in England. And this woman had a baby, and they froze it right away. And she came home, and on the baptism day, she cooked it in a frying pan with onions and a little tomato. And they toasted little pieces that look like French bread, and they spread it on it like a pate, and they all ate it.
Ugh.
Yep, that's true.
something.
So I couldn't believe when I saw it. This was like about 3 years ago. They had
Wow.
a thing on Channel 2. Yep, so
I would have
it's
used
been done.
some butter, some wine,
What did
some
she-
butter,
I
some
know
white wine,
it's
garlic.
big.
Fava beans.
Yeah, it was a big
That's cute.
iron cast frying pan, and she cooked it up, and she put a few things in it, and then she made like a pate out of it, and she spread it on these little breads, and everybody had that with a glass of wine.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't think I
Okay,
could do
just
it.
thought,
But thank you
know.
for sharing.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good one. No, at least in this case, though, it was, it's 10:30 at night that we're talking about this. When
Yeah.
most people probably already had dinner. I actually read the story originally at like 8:15 in the morning when people were sitting
Ruin
down having
people's
breakfast.
Saturday morning breakfast.
Yeah.
You did.
So there's nothing better than talking poop pills
Wow.
on a Saturday morning. And speaking of talking about poop, here's the guy that I talk poop with all the time. About nothing in general, and sometimes about life-shattering, earth-changing subjects. You never know where a conversation will go with tonight's guest, the one, the only, making his return to spooky South Coast. He is Chris Balzano. Good evening, Chris. How are you?
I am spooktacular. How are you guys doing?
Well, you stole our word now, so now all I can say is we're feeling poopy. I don't know if you heard that story we were just sharing, but there's a company in Medford, Mass, called Open Biome that is treating people with C. diff by feeding them the healthy poop of other people.
You know, I've been listening to a lot of Kevin Smith's podcasts, and his show Education brought this up about a year ago, before the poop pill, when it was still the only other two methods were available. So, unfortunately, I'm well versed in this, but that didn't stop me while listening to the Tim Weisberg show this morning from hacking up a little bit.
Well, I don't see why, that wouldn't be a primary reason for you to just move back here. I mean, $13,000 a year you're leaving on the table.
It's having to go to Medford, I guess, would kind of cancel that out.
That's true. That's true. How do you collect poop in Medford? You just open the door. So, I don't know. Do we have a huge listener base in Medford? I don't know. Excuse me. Let me pronounce it correctly. Medford?
Medford. I got a lot of peeps in Medford, so.
All right. Well, I'm sure that they are more than happy that we were talking about their poop pills there. But so it's been a while now, and I think we should kind of discuss this a little bit. You took some time off from the paranormal. A lot of people thought that we fired you from the show, and that is only partially true. You kind of fired yourself.
Yeah. Well, you said, this is just not working anymore. We got to let you go. So,
Well, actually, what it was, I was getting jealous because you were getting way too much of the fan mail.
Well, listen, I get a lot of hate mail thinking people thought I replaced Chris Balzano, and I had to tell them that it wasn't.
No, really?
Yep.
Wow,
First of all, the fact that anyone would think that I could be replaced is crazy.
I know.
Right, I know, that alone. I didn't know Chris's wife could write that many emails, and actually, she's probably glad that he stopped calling into the show all the time. Like, what are you talking about over there?
I want
hear you
my
in the other
Saturday
room.
nights
Yeah.
back.
But you took a little bit of a step back. You had a lot going on, and so you've kind of been out of the paranormal for a bit.
Yeah, I've been kind of, I'm never really out because that's just where my mind goes. That's where my passion lies. So I've just been kind of, doing things from the outside and trying to, develop stuff and kind of find out where my niche was. It's a very interesting little pool that we play in, and it got really crowded. I think some people were peeing in it. So
I believe they were, yeah.
I had to kind of find out, where my place was in it and what I need to do kind of going forward. So, there's some very interesting things that I'm working on, and so it's just kind of, to be honest with you, I was just clearing out some emails, and I'm just looking over some past spooky South Coast emails and some other paranormal emails, and I'm like, there's still some work to be done and some stories to tell, so.
Well, so I know that we haven't talked, you and I, we talk all the time via text and sometimes via Facebook messages. We haven't really talked anything paranormal in quite a while. It's just life stuff, and so, I mean, what's the status of the things that you were working on? I mean, you were known for the masscrossroads.com website, the Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads. What's the state of that these days?
I took that down about 2 years ago. And so and unfortunately when I took it down, it also deactivated the email. So I don't know how many emails I've gotten of people saying, "Have you heard that Stephanie Burke?" But and I've been slowly over the last month or so moving some of that stuff over to just like a WordPress, simple blog kind of situation, going through some of those old stories that I had, just kind of saying, all right, what fits kind of the new way that I'm approaching things, and kind of moving that stuff over and planning to move stuff over, and then just working on some stuff around it. So it's much more about the legend aspect of things, much more about people's stories and how people's stories about the paranormal kind of add to the overall picture, and how they fit into some other bigger issues that are kind of facing us and have faced us, and a lot less of the investigative, this is a cool place to check out kind of route.
Yeah, it seems like when you're saying about how the pool became crowded, it seems like there was a lot of everybody jumping into that pool at once. And a lot of people didn't know how to swim, but they made the biggest splash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it seems like that's a pretty good way to look at it, because like those who can't swim make the biggest splash, and that's what ended up happening in the paranormal for a while. And it's sad that it's sidelined people like yourself who were working on this stuff well before it was popular on television.
First of all, that's an amazing analogy. But I mean, and it wasn't, I don't, I'm past the point of being like mad at the turn that the paranormal took. It was more of just that, it became, and I think still is, so investigation driven and evidence driven and pseudoscience driven. And I'm as much to blame for anyone. I mean, I wrote 2 books that were pretty much like how to investigate stuff. And it was very far, I think, from where I had originally started. And so when I kind of got over that, it was more of like, and I I said this to Costa, I'm like, I'm not sure I represent this field anymore. I don't know how I can be a content director for content that I'm not necessarily sure I have faith in anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of people will probably find themselves going through at some point. They're going to have the moment where they decide either, is this still the same? Is this the same research that I wanted to do when I set out in this field? And then other people will say, is this even still motivating me the same way that it used to? And it seemed like, as much as you didn't like the turn that the field had taken, you didn't like the approach that a lot of people were taking with it becoming so pseudoscience based. It seems too like maybe, and this is just my observation, nothing we've really talked about, but it seems like maybe you were just kind of burnt out on the whole idea anyway. You kind of needed to get away from it a little bit to rediscover your passion for it. Kind of like, when you're a kid, Christmas is this special magical time that you look forward to all year round, and it's a feeling, and it comes over you, and you know when it's coming. And then you go through those years where it doesn't really mean anything anymore, and then you have your own kids, and you rediscover it because you're looking at it through a fresh set of eyes. And it seemed like you needed a chance to look at the paranormal through a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, I needed to find the mystery in it. I needed to rediscover the mystery of it, to rediscover the ooh of it, and that part of me that was like intrigued by stuff, and the part of me that was that campfire kid who really liked to hear the stories, and really liked to say like, well, wait a minute here, and to question them, and then to kind of like connect with people about them and retell them, and watch the way that the stories kind of evolve. So in that case, an interesting way that the paranormal is like that, because it has transformed itself in the way that people look at ghosts and look at UFOs and look at cryptids, is very much molded by the modern day presentation of it, just the way
Right.
it was for us in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, that's a really good point there, because just looking at the people in the room right now. I mean, Matt Koss is only a few years younger than you and I, Chris, but Stephanie, there's a big age difference. They're about 10 years apart, and so for us, you can tell like the way that you grew up in the paranormal as opposed to the way we grew up in the paranormal. Chris and I are watching, and Matt too. He's not that much younger, and no offense, Matt. I don't want to reveal your age because I know how sensitive you probably are about it. Yeah. So, but we grew up watching things where it was our exposure to the paranormal was In Search Of, That's Incredible, Unsolved Mysteries, but also amazing stories, tales from the dark side, things of that nature.
Right.
Whereas Stephanie, you grew up more in an era, you were coming of age at a time when it was more about
Hocus Pocus.
Listen, that's
all
my
about
favorite
Hocus
movie
Pocus.
ever.
But it's true it is. But you came up in the era of ghost hunters, of some of these more fact or fiction type based shows.
Kinda. Ghost Hunters was late teens.
Right.
But I was that little dorky kid that was going to the library and taking out all the ghost books in the section that I shouldn't even been reading out of yet. So Unsolved Mysteries I watched probably at a good 5 or 6 years old.
But that's when you're home,
Yeah.
you know, watching those. But when you're kind of getting out there and putting your foot
Yep.
in the pool yourself, you're putting your foot in a pool that is already encompassed by that approach and that attitude.
Yeah, I think right around the time that I at least started to get into certain things, then Ghost Hunters became super popular, and it didn't really suck in the beginning, to be honest. I really liked it in the beginning, but it was brand new.
Right.
And then when I started to learn more and more of how things actually happened, I stopped watching.
Well, but you came about and you were out there doing investigations at a time when people expected you to investigate like they do on television.
Yeah.
Whether it be other people you're investigating with or whether it be people you're investigating for. You know, that kind of molded what they thought an investigation was. Chris, when you started doing it, I know that you were actually getting involved in these things way back before there was even television shows. And you kind of had to form your own way of doing things based on kind of the research of those before you, but also just you didn't have a television show to give you an example of how to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a lot of books, and it was a lot of like, well, wait a minute here. What if I bring a radio with me and I tune it to AM radio, and I put it on a station that definitely doesn't come in? What'll happen then? You know, like these kind of, not revolutionary because people were doing that kind of stuff, but more of just kind of, a discovery aspect of it as opposed to it being out there for us to purchase, which has created a generation. I mean, we're talking, 10 years now. To have a generation of people who are investigating that way and kind of have that stuff like already ready for them. But I think part of that, like we were saying earlier, it takes away the mystery. Like we were trying to find things that would work as opposed to being told, hey, this stuff does work, here, go use it. So we would have we would have things like divining rods, right next to barometers and right next to, like I said, the radios and the flashlights and tape recorders and trying to pick up voices and stuff. And so it was this very kind of hodgepodge way. And we didn't know what to do with the information once we got it anyway. We just recorded it and we just, kind of documented it.
I think part of the difference, too, is when we were coming up, and I say we... I didn't actually go out and actually conduct investigations myself till after I had seen Ghost Hunters. But I'm not investigating in the Ghost Hunter style. I'm learning from Matt Moniz, who's been doing it for a long time, and other people that he knew in the field. But anyway, that aside, we're coming up in a time now. Anybody that's in the field now is coming up in a time when we think we have somewhat of a definition of what a ghost is, or we're being told by paranormal media what we should feel a ghost is. When we first started looking into this, when we first had our own experiences that made us want to research it, we didn't know what the F is this, because we had no valid way of trying to explain it, whereas now we're told what to think about it.
Yeah, and those, that the research wasn't available for us to even consume in mass quantities. There were books, and I was just like Stephanie going in the library and sneaking into the adult section, not that kind of adult section, but,
right.
You would have had the best town librring ever if they had that
wasn't.
section.
I can't speak for you, Chris.
The infamous Goffstown second floor library. But there wasn't, wait a minute, this thing that I'm experiencing, let me throw in a couple keywords and realize that a whole bunch of other people were experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
Or that things existed, things that were outside of our realm of understanding. Being like, I wouldn't even know to touch upon that. I wouldn't even know to apply that to the things that I've been seeing or the things I've been hearing from people. So it was a very exciting time. It's evolved, but it also offers the opportunity for people to become more specialized if they're willing to do that.
I mean, we live in a world now where our children probably won't ever have to worry about any stigma if they walk into a library, although they'll be like, what the hell is a library? What are you talking about, Dad? But if they walked into a library when they're in their teenage years and they check out a book on a paranormal topic, they don't have any kind of fear of going up there to the adult working at the circulation desk and worry about the the look that you might get or the comment that they might make because that's what you're reading. But we went through that. I know I did when I went to the library. I used to hide, the Mysteries of the Unknown book under like a couple of other books so that when I got up there, they wouldn't question what I was doing. I was checking out Stephen King books from the library at 12, 13 years old, and the librarian was refusing to check them out to me. So that kind of imprinted itself. I'm like, well, if she's not going to let me read a fictional ghost story, how is she going to feel about it if I'm trying to read a real life ghost story? And there was that stigma, right. And there was that feeling of unacceptance, and that's pretty much gone away these days.
Yeah, and it's now there are books that are specifically catered to children, and catered to young adults especially. And it is a but for all of that, it's still a very much distorted field. Like a lot of what drew me back in was talking to my students and hearing like their opinion of things, and like, well, wait a minute, we don't understand. Paranormal Activity is not a real movie. If that didn't happen,
it's not a documentary.
They don't make that distinction. But then to find out that there were new urban legends popping up, and new kind of bad guys to look at, and new creepy things, and yet still all of my students were scared to go into the bathroom and say, Bloody Mary during their during a section we were talking about myths and legends and folklore. They still were freaked out to do it. My kids know it because it's on Teen Titans Go. So it's one of the things that's actually we think it's reached a certain point, but I think that's partly because we're in a bubble. Less people when they find out about my books, for example, say, "Oh, you're into that stuff." Less people say that, and more people are interested in one here. So they don't look at me as unusual, or me as an unusual person the way they used to, as much for that reason. But I still think there's still certain stigmas attached to it, and certain kind of misunderstanding.
There's a point too that you reach in your own journey, I think, and I think that we've kind of all reached it here. But there's a point where you realize, instead of being insecure about your belief, you almost feel like those people who give you the stink eye when you're involved in this stuff, it's almost like you've got something over them, because that it's legit, and you feel almost bad for them because they haven't come to accept that, and they think that it's weird. So you eventually reach a point when you're confident enough in your pursuit of the paranormal that you feel comfortable with it, and everybody else is the weirdo for not believing.
Yeah, it's like knowing a great band.
Right, yeah, good analogy.
That's still underground, and you're like, no, trust me, this music is great. No, trust me. And they don't get it, but you're like, but I'm still going to listen to it, man. It still is out there rocking me.
And then eventually that band becomes popular, and then you hate them. You're like, oh, what a bunch of sellouts. I hate these guys now. And then
that's pretty much my entire music taste right there. So. a series of being in the know and then absolutely not standing them anymore.
So what you're saying is you are the original hipster.
I'm wearing my best beat jacket right now.
If you start getting the little the horn rim glasses and all that stuff too, you haven't gone that far yet, have you?
No, my glasses have gotten thicker rimmed as I've gotten older.
Yeah, but that's just because
I'm going much more for the Weezer look now.
Yeah, that's not because you're a hipster though. That's because you're just going blind. It's too much looking at all that paranormal stuff. It eventually just makes your eyes cross.
I'm with you.
Hey, you wrote a whole book about picturing yourself capturing ghosts on film. So that's a lot of pareidolia you had to deal with, making your eyes go cross over the years.
Yeah, and going through all those students' papers doesn't help much either.
Yeah, that doesn't help either, especially reading some of their chicken scratch writing. Well,
oh my word.
Hey, I've seen your handwriting. It's a good thing you have to hand in all your book manuscripts typewritten. So
I'm sorry if I seem a bit distracted. My dog, who never barks, is going absolutely crazy. So I don't know if this is a spooky Southcoast thing or what.
Yeah, my voice has that effect on dogs. She can actually hear it through the phone. So when we come back, we only got a couple minutes left in this hour. When we come back on the other side, I do want to get a little bit into this topic of the idea of, we hear athletes say it all the time. We hear them say, I want to thank God. God played a big part in this. I didn't make the play. God helped me make the play. And we hear, as writers, we do it all the time, and I'm guilty of it, even though I think it's a crutch, where we write these stories about how this is the team of fate. This is the team of destiny. Destiny controls the outcome of this game. And we look at it like that. And it's almost, we make it too easy to blame everything on or say that everything is the result of unknown or unseen forces. And I want to get into that a little bit because it could go either way. And so we'll get a little bit into that, but we'll also talk to you on a football level about what you think about tomorrow's game as well. But you said you were moving everything over to a new site. Is that site something that's up and running that you want to share with everybody?
Well, yeah, it's WordPress.trippingonlegends.com. You can just Google Tripping on Legends. It's something that I've had up for a few years, but I'm just trying to move some things over. I used to do like dual posts on both Spooky Southcoast, and I would throw it up on there, and no one would ever find it, but it was kind of designed that way to not be found until I was ready.
Well, we'll just have to make sure that we give it a easier URL for people too. We'll give it like a redirect URL.
That sounds awesome.
Like Balzano's brain droppings. No, wait, then you'll get sued like Mike Barnacle. So, but people can check it out. There's a lot of content up there. It's trippingonlegends.wordpress.com. And you'll be able to see some of the stuff up there as well. And, of course, you can follow Chris on Twitter @SpookyBalzano. Even when you left the paranormal, even when you left Spooky Southcoast, you still kept that Twitter handle because I think that fits you perfectly. And
kept the picture as well.
Well, there you go. So you can follow him on Twitter @SpookyBalzano, and it's a great way to interact with Chris. And when we come back, we'll talk about some of the other things, too. I want to bring up a little bit later on the show some of the things that have happened in the paranormal world since you have been kind of on the sidelines a bit, and get your take. Because there's been a lot of things over the last bit of time where I've said, gee, I'd love to get Chris on and see what he thinks about that. So we'll get into some of that coming up in the next hour as well, if that works for you.
Excellent.
Anything you don't want to talk about? That brief period where you only wore women's clothes while you were not with us?
I'm totally comfortable
Poop pills.
with that.
How do you feel about poop pills?
Yeah, would you take a poop pill if somebody gave you one? Would you take it on a dare?
And I would take it even without a dare.
There you go. See, my kind of guy.
I'm probiotic. I'm pro-probiotic.
See, this is why he's my brother from another mother. We think exactly the same. All right, well, we'll check back in with Chris coming up following the news. And, of course, we'll take your calls as well throughout the course of the night. 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. Those are the numbers to call in throughout the course of the program. You can also hit us up on Twitter, either directly @SpookySC or just tweet using the hashtag SpookyLive, and we'll see it on Spooky Southcoast's Spooky TV option. And don't forget, if you're out and about, you're, wherever you might be, maybe you're investigating and you want to be able to check out the show on the smartphone, all you have to do is download the Radio Pup app, Radio Pup. That's P-U-P, Radio Pup. And you will be able to search for WBSM, search for New Bedford, and you will find the show there every Saturday night. We'll be back in just a few moments here on the new 1420 WBSM. It's Spooky Southcoast.
New Bedford news, New Bedford talk, New England sports. The new 1420 WBSM New Bedford and WBSM.com.
From ABC News, I'm Richard Cantu. The latest winter storm promises to drop significant snowfall from Nebraska to Maine. Brian Hurley at the National Weather Service says it's hitting the Midwest tonight into tomorrow.
Certainly, when it comes to wintry precipitation, we're looking at northern portions of the Central Plains, and that will be spreading into the upper Midwest, really affecting areas around Chicago.
It's marching eastward for Sunday night into Monday. Islamic State has done it again. A new video indicates that Kenji Goto, a Japanese journalist held captive by the terror outfit, has been beheaded.
The video, titled A Message to the Japanese Government, begins with Goto on his knees in what appears to be a river valley. A masked man with a knife in his hand speaks with a British accent, addressing Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Let the nightmare for Japan begin, the executioner says, as he puts a knife to Goto's neck.
ABC News chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross. The video goes black, then returns to show Goto's severed head. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called it a despicable and horrendous act of terrorism. Hospitalized in Atlanta, Bobby Christina Brown, 21-year-old daughter of singer Bobby Brown and the late Whitney Houston, Her husband found her unresponsive in a bathtub at their home in Roswell, Georgia. Police spokeswoman Lisa Holland.
I can't comment on any condition because of the HIPAA laws, but I can tell you she is still alive.
On Oregon's Mount Hood, a National Guard helicopter airlifted 2 injured climbers off the mountain. The man and woman fell, the man suffering a possible broken leg. The woman broke both of her ankles. Widely considered the father of the birth control pill, chemist Carl Gerasi died at his home in San Francisco. In 1951, he led a team in Mexico City that developed the synthetic molecule that became a key component of the first birth control pill. Gerasi was 91. You're listening to ABC News.
More Americans turn to ABC's Good Morning America. So how do you get to be America's #1 morning show? Well, it helps to know what you want in the morning. And we know. Take it from Robin Roberts.
You want the news. You want it fast, first, and right on point.
Take it from George Stephanopoulos.
You want breaking news, news-making exclusives.
Take it from Lara Spencer.
We know. You want it all now.
So go on. Tell them, Robin.
Put some good in your morning.
With ABC's
Good Morning America.
Good Morning America.
Good Morning America.
Your favorite celebs are challenging you to change the world.
I challenge you to shave your head to fundraise for cancer research.
I challenge you to eat a hot pepper to raise awareness for global warming.
Whatever your cause, take a challenge and get it noticed. Download the We365 app for free and change the world one challenge at a time. Each download helps give goats to provide income to families in developing countries.
Get We365. Change the world every day.
The NFL Hall of Fame class of 2015 inductees have been announced. ABC's Alex Stone has the story from Phoenix, where tomorrow's Super Bowl will be played.
The pick that required the least discussion here was former San Diego Chargers linebacker Junior Seau, who committed suicide in 2012. He and former Kansas City Chiefs guard Will Shields, both 12-time Pro Bowl selections in their NFL careers, led the 2015 class. Also inducted former Pittsburgh Steelers running back Jerome Bettis, wide receiver Tim Brown, defensive end Charles Haley, center Mick Tingelhoff, and former executives Bill Polian and Ron Wolf. The class will be formally enshrined at the Hall of Fame in August. Alex Stone, ABC News, Phoenix.
Fans and friends gathered in Chicago for a big send-off for a baseball legend. ABC's Daria Albinger has that story.
Ernie Banks would have turned 84 on Saturday. Instead of a birthday party, there was a memorial service for the man known as Mr. Cub. The slugger who spent his entire career with the Cubs was remembered a 2-time MVP, a Hall of Fame member, a veteran, and a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Former player and manager Joe Torre says baseball and the world are better because of Banks.
Mr. Cub leaves a grateful game behind. Let's play two, my friend.
Banks died January 23rd of a heart attack. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
This is ABC News.
Your favorite celebs are challenging you to change the world.
I challenge you to shave your head to fundraise for cancer research.
I challenge you to eat a hot pepper to raise awareness for global warming.
Whatever your cause, take a challenge and get it noticed. Download the We365 app for free and change the world one challenge at a time. Each download helps give goats to provide income to families in developing countries.
Get We365. Change the world every day.
I'm Richard Cantu, ABC News.
From ABC News, Tech Trends. When it comes to TVs for the big game,
what's better, bigger or smaller?
Bigger! Does it get any better than slouching on the couch on Super Bowl Sunday?
What's better than watching the big game on a big screen with my friends?
And lucky for viewers, it's also prime time for getting a great deal on a big screen.
There's so many promotions around the Super Bowl right now, so on average we see price drops about 20%.
Jim Wilcox, senior electronics editor at Consumer Reports, says that can save you a lot of money.
So that could be anywhere from a couple of $100 to as much as $1,000 depending on the initial price of the TV.
Or even more.
Right now, buy one, get one free. Like this Panasonic 50-inch 1080p for $899 and get a 19-inch LCD TV free.
And if you play the bargain hunting game correctly, guests are sure to bring their game faces.
Whoa! Oh, my.
With Tech Trends, I'm Karen Chase, ABC News.
welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with Stephanie Burke and the silent assassin, Matt Costa. And, of course, we are talking about the paranormal, as we do each and every Saturday night. But tonight we're adding a little bit of a football twist to it, because the Patriots are taking on the Seahawks in the Super Bowl tomorrow night. And you can catch the game right here on the new 1420 WBSM. Pregame starts at 5 o'clock.
In his field, the best guy on the planet Earth.
Absolutely. And Dennis Miller, you just can't stop dishing out those compliments to me. I appreciate it, but really, you got to lay off. It's getting awkward. Tomorrow night, Matt, you'll be here covering the game, right? You'll be working the board?
I'll be here. If anybody wants to call in, just chat about the game. Fill me in on what's going on.
Yeah, kind of explain to you. Do you want me to do that? Do you want me to call you when something weird happens?
If anybody calls, I'll just pick up the phone and say, that'll move the chains.
There you go.
So if you want to hear that from me, call.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, we're going to bring back in our guest here, Chris Balzano here. But, Matt, just remember that all that matters tomorrow night is that the footballs are properly inflated
of course,
to the correct PSI.
Of course.
Because we don't want to play with deflated balls.
We don't.
Speaking of deflated balls.
We've been doing that for 9 years, and we've still been at the peak of our game.
Did you guys get to see the video that Jimmy Kimmel put together with all the local celebrities?
No. Everybody was asking me today if I'd seen it, and I have not had the chance yet.
I haven't watched it yet, but everybody says it's so funny.
They didn't ask us to be in it.
I know.
We're local celebrities.
But we're not on the level of like Matt Damon, Ben Affleck.
Speak for yourself.
Not yet.
It's kind of like,
maybe Ben Affleck.
Maybe.
Yeah, let's say it's kind of like Spooky South Coast career arc, and
Affleck's the new Batman, right?
Yeah, but he's not really. He's not really the. He's the new Batman in a Superman movie.
Yeah.
Right.
So that only partially counts as being Batman.
Yeah.
He does make good movies, though.
That's By the way, I finally saw, this is complete off topic, but I finally saw Guardians of the Galaxy the other night.
I thought it was good.
I had yet to see it. Did you? You know how when you watch a Marvel movie, you got to watch all the way through to the end credits?
I did see the end. Yes.
So you did see the end.
Yep.
So you saw the little cameo there. I don't know, Chris. You back with us?
Nope.
Oh, okay. He's handling some business. Let's see. I don't know. This probably could be him too. Good evening. You're on WBSM Spooky South Coast.
Hey Tim, how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, in regard to the
I'm unmuted.
The poop brigade.
It's funny. You want to call about poop, and Chris pops back on the line. There you go. Works out perfectly.
Talking about DC and Marvel, and I'm off air, but you get the poop talk going on, and
well,
it was perfect timing.
If you get them back down here, especially somebody from the company and stuff, we should just rent a van and get a business going and
just go door to door.
Yeah, just
plus do the pooping thing. So this could be a landfall.
Well, yeah,
But I'll be paying attention and listening when you get the guy down. So
yeah, we'll do that. We'll have a remote poop donation service.
They're for poops and giggles.
There you go. On the football side, I really believe. This is definitely going to be a tight game. There's some big wigs, even Vegas type, saying Seattle by 6-7 points. No, I'm thinking this is going to be a 3 or 4 point game, and I think if Seattle is on the receiving side of a turnover, they need to score touchdowns and not field goals to catch up with the offensive effectiveness of the Patriots. But I think shy of 3 or 4 turnovers from the Patriots, which I doubt, I think the Patriots, again, their long-term experience between Brady and Belichick, I'm predicting 24-20 Patriots.
Wow, that is definitely a tight pick there. Now, do you think, Phil? Do you think that maybe fate? Do you think that plays a hand in what happens in a football game, or do you think that it's kind of it's up? They get the talent from somewhere, and then it's up to them to use it.
Talent will take you so far, but determination, basics. If you don't get away from the basics, you don't have to go back to them. You don't get scrambled, and you need mental toughness. And now the Patriots have this us against the world mentality, so now they've got something even more to prove. And Brady knows that because of his age, he may never get back here again. They won 3 in a row, lost 2. I just don't see them losing the 3rd one in a row. So I'll be listening, and thanks for taking my call.
All right, you have a good one. Enjoy the game.
Bye-bye.
Well, Chris, while we're talking about things from a football perspective, before we get into some of the metaphysical stuff that surrounds the idea of the Super Bowl on a purely football gridiron perspective. What do you think about tomorrow's game?
I think that it's really hard because I am a Pats fan, but I really like Seattle, and I think that it's a really good matchup, and everything's kind of, as I'm looking at it, the Patriots offense against the Seahawks defense, and the Legion of Boom, and all that kind of stuff, and how the heck do we stop Wilson? I think it's a really, really tough call, but my heart still feels like the Patriots have to win. But I kind of like that, because when the Patriots when it's like they're not supposed to win, when the expectation shifts, and all of a sudden they're the underdog in these things, they historically have done very well. But that's, and last call I was saying, and that's kind of that destiny kind of aspect. Like, well, they've lost 2 in a row, so now they have to win. Right. They seem to do best when people underestimate them, and so I'm still going with Patriots, and I'm thinking like a 27-23 kind of thing, 27-24. So I still think it's going to be very close.
Well, I mean, even the idea of using disrespect as a motivational factor, that's kind of it's kind of an outside influence. It's kind of an outside of their own ability type of thing, and they always say, and Bill Belichick always says, we control the things that we can control. And that's what they try to do. They try to control those things to the best of their ability. But sometimes with sports, you have to kind of give in to something greater. And being able to give in to being disrespected is part of that. I mean, do you think that disrespect becomes something palpable and becomes almost like an otherworldly force that can drive them and motivate them?
If we can talk about intent or wanting something to happen or wanting something to, on a paranormal level, to manifest, then it does become something tangible. It does become something that you can actually use or manipulate or can create. And I'm much, whether that determines whether or not you win, but I think it's definitely something. I think it creates an artificial hysteria that you can get caught up in very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. I remember one of my, when we were playing for the state championship back in the day, and our defense, our offensive coordinator, I guess you could call him, if you can have that in high school in New Hampshire, was talking about comparing us to his nephew, who he kneels down next to guide. And we were bawling our eyes out and so amped up and so determined to play. And we ended up losing. That's that part of the story. But I was not even a starter, and I was geared up. I wanted to go. I could take on the world. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think there's something that can be kind of manipulated in our systems biologically by these kinds of forces. Well, whether that can carry you to a championship is a different story. But I think you can definitely manipulate the biology of your body.
Well, on a spiritual side of things, Stephanie, people who have your abilities and people who focus on that mm-hmm. will say that when you put what you put out there, it's going to come back to you, and right. and that if you are tuned into a certain wavelength, it can affect you one way or another. Do you think that that's kind of what happens when there is a disrespect, or when there is kind of some sort of outside motivating factor, like a Spygate, like a Deflategate, where there's these vibes that are being put into the Patriots locker room, and then they absorb them in a certain way? I'm sure that you've seen this stuff and some of the stuff that you do, and seeing the way that it can affect people.
Well, yeah, definitely. If you think about it, if I sat here and I totally belittled you to the point of you,
I would just laugh at you and say, "You know nothing, woman."
Right, and it made you want to crawl into a corner and cry.
That's actually what would really happen. Yes,
probably. How does that make you feel? How would you leave here? What would you think about for the rest of the night? What would you think about tomorrow? You're going to obsess over it because you're a human, and you think like, oh my God, this is happening. It happens. I mean, the Patriots are probably used to it by now, so it's probably rolling off their backs, no problem. But things like that definitely do affect your mental state of mind, whether or not it has anything to do with any type of, spiritual way of thinking, or as a human, you kind of tend to take that all in and then soak it in and then obsess over it. So it does affect, definitely, just like something positive makes you feel like you could, run across the parking lot back and forth 3 times. It affects you as a human first, and then like your psyche and spiritually definitely second.
Chris, I'm just going to ask this question just to get it, recorded into podcast form and get it formally on the record, just in case there's a very remote chance that it's possibly true. But what if Deflategate didn't come from the Colts or from the Ravens or from the NFL employee who was a former Jets employee who just hates Bill Belichick? What if Deflategate came from Bill Belichick? What if he's the one that through backdoor channels got the NFL to launch this investigation to be the ultimate motivating factor for his team? Can you create your own, can you create your own outside forces to influence you in your life? Can you create these negatives? I mean, we say that it happens all the time when people believe in a curse. If you believe that you're cursed and you're going to be cursed, can you create these own negatives to have an impact on yourself?
Kind of the Spicoli factor on the linebacker Jackson, the Forrest Whitaker character, like destroy his car, be the person who actually is doing it. Dude, Bill could do anything. Of course, Bill could have done that.
Yeah,
I
wouldn't be
found out
surprised
that he had. Would it seem completely crazy to you?
No, I'd actually think that it was the awesomest thing I ever heard.
I mean, it does seem like that he has, but the Patriots have always seemed to have that. It was in '94. It was Bill Parcells quitting, leaving the team. It seems to be that media week for them is like controversy time.
Yeah, if there's something there that can push your team, then that's good. I don't know, just putting it out there, just in case there's a chance that it's possible. But we do have a call on the line, so let's take that. And if anybody wants to call during the course of the discussion with our guest, Chris Balzano, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. Maybe, Chris, you'll even get some calls like, I sent you like 15 emails to your Mass Crossroads site. I had a Puckwudgie experience, and I want to share it with you. Good evening. You're on Spooky Southcoast. How are you?
And how you doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. A friend of mine said that the Pats are going to win by 15. I myself will say 30.
Wow. That would be like the most lopsided Super Bowl ever, wouldn't it?
Well, hey, what a way to send a message.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And we saw them run up the score in 2007. They get accused of cheating. They'll say, we'll show you.
Well, look what happened with the Colts.
Yeah, they were able to handle them pretty easily. But still, I mean,
they took care of the Colts. Why not the Eagles?
Well, I mean, I wrote about this a little bit in my prediction that'll be in the paper tomorrow. I mean, I think a lot of people get so wrapped up in the way the Patriots feel about this game that the Seahawks have become a secondary character in this story. They're just part of the background of the Patriots story, and that's the Seahawks are a damn good team, and they're the defending Super Bowl champions. And so I think that it's kind of it's almost a disrespect for them how much people are overlooking them, at least here in New England. So I don't know, 30 points, that might be.
I think we'd overlook them anyways because we're all from New England.
That's true. But of course, this caller is going to go out and place a bet on the fact they win by 30 and be right, and then we're going to look stupid and be like, we should have listened to him.
No, not at all.
That's the smart answer.
I will say something for the record. I will be watching this game for a friend of mine because he'll be working third shift over at Tedeschi's, and I'm going to show my gratitude to him out of respect. However, my sport, the granddaddy of them all, is going to be starting right on Valentine's Day, and that'll be NASCAR. And that's number one, right along with my Bruins and the Red Sox. Three-way tie for first.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call.
You're welcome.
Have a great night.
You too.
And, speaking of Super Bowl bets, I've got the perfect Super Bowl bet to make with somebody. Just bet them instead of betting cash or anything like that, because that would be illegal. We can't advocate that on the air.
Right.
Shoveling on Monday afternoon.
Oh, God.
Or Tuesday morning. There's the perfect Super Bowl bet. But,
well, the best bet that I heard was between Star-Lord and Captain America.
Well,
Whichever team wins, the other one's going to go to the children's hospital in that city. So that's the kind of cool betting I like.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that too because everybody's going to win one way or another with that. And I don't know, if I was Chris Pratt, I'd be like, or you could dress as Indiana Jones, even though it's not official yet. But I'm sure Chris Evans would be like, hell yeah, I'll dress as Indiana Jones. But when we're talking about this idea, though, of and I mentioned there how, the Seahawks have become kind of just a character in the Patriots story here and how they're going to respond to this. And another entity that becomes kind of a secondary character is the idea of God or fate or what have you. Do you think, Chris, that these these deities, these otherworldly beings, whatever you want to call them, these outside forces, do you think that they care about something as mundane as a football game?
I think they care about the individuals.
Okay.
And I think they care about the spirit of the individuals who might be in the game. P.S. I don't necessarily think it's coming from necessarily a good place all the time. Whether it's someone selling their soul or making a deal or that kind of stuff kind of plays into it as well. We're thinking in a positive way, but someone could have done something so nefarious to become infamous on the world's biggest stage. But I have a really hard time seeing an entire team. I think we do a lot of that to build up the game and to build up contests because, it's not like, back in the day you had people who would, I'm going to win this for my God, or I'm going to win this for my, for my people. And I think there's a lot less of that. Because we're not talking about real conquest. We're not talking about war. We're not talking about hand-to-hand to the death kind of dying in honor even if you die. I think we're talking about so many people, so many personalities, the personalities of the cities, the personalities of the followers and believers, that there is no clear-cut good guy and bad guy sometimes. So it's really hard to say in a game like this, who would be fated to win. If we say, okay, there is some sort of God force, there is someone who can control this. Who would they win it for? What would their stake in it be? To reward someone who's been faithful? Well, out of those 108 people, so I'm thinking 54 to a roster, I could be wrong about that. Not to mention coaches, not to mention support staff, not to mention the people who are following the game. That seems like a lot of people to find to kind of balance to tip, I should say, the scales to say that this team is more virtuous. And so I really feel it could be more of a individual thing, like this person who's been a follower or this person who's been virtuous gets rewarded by doing something in the game, because ultimately it's not whether they win or lose the game, it's about their own personal triumph.
Right, and it's part of, it could be part of their journey as a person, as a human, to either win or lose this game. And
Right.
and then what do you do if you are, these outside forces? Let's just for a moment play God. And if that's the case, we're looking at this game and how do we decide that 75% of the Seahawks deserve to win, but 78% of the Patriots deserve to win? You know what I mean? Like it almost gets. I can't imagine that God's sitting up there reading the latest line in the newspaper to decide how we're going to go about picking who wins and who loses this game. And it just seems like there's too much too much.
I mean, there do seem to be moments that pop up that seem as if it couldn't have been scripted any differently.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the 2009 Saints after Katrina. Or the Red Sox after the bombing, or even the Patriots in 2001. I think that probably when I think of the aftermath of 9/11, I think of Joe Andruzzi, both crying in the press conference and running onto the field with the flags. And yet, for every single one of those, you have the Islanders, you have the Bad Boys of Detroit. You have the Pass brothers winning multiple championships, even though they were both juicing up to their noses. So I often think that it's us wanting it to be, and then we get involved in these cycles of, which is the same thing. Someone you love gets sick, and you say, there's a bigger plan to it. And I think that offers us comfort and offers us joy when it's going well for us. But it's really hard to think that in large schemes like that with so many people involved, anyone is worthy of having that tip.
And it also, I mean, if you are an athlete, I mean, I guess the idea of if you're a coach, if you're Bill Belichick, say, and you're looking at this team and you hear a player say, well, I'm going to put it all in God's hands, you know, that can, you know, be like a punch in the stomach to you, because you start to think to yourself, well, you know, if you're worried about whether or not God's going to win this game for you, are you going to work hard enough to make sure that you win the game? And I think that, you know, luckily most people who have that approach, they come at it with the respect of, you know, God will come through for me, but I have to do my part in order to get that. I have to hashtag do my job in order.
Right.
I have to be copyright 2014 New England Patriots.
There's that great line that the middle school English teacher coming out of me from "Where the right fern grows, you know, God meets no man halfway."
Right.
Of you know, and I think we he, you know, if there's a God, let's take a Christian God for example, because when he's often praised in a game, it's for that. I mean, I think that there's a certain joy and pride, if that's possible, from that entity if they're praised. But I don't think that the game itself would even be worthy of manipulating one way or the other. Like I said, individuals.
And I would think, you know, if I was God, and I know in my own mind I kind of am, but if I was God, I would say, listen, I have given all of you out there the talent to be on an NFL field, to be in the final game of the season. You all have the talent. I'm just going to sit back with my popcorn like everybody else and see what happens.
Yeah, if we want to go back to Christopher Lloyd, I guess, and from Angels in the Outfield, where it's like, you know, we can get you there, but, you know, the humans have to win the championships. We can get you in the game, but the humans have to win championships.
Which is just a plot device. But anyway. Well, I mean, I just think, you know, we'll see tomorrow. We're going to see it. People are going to stand. Whatever team wins, people will stand up on the podium, you know, thanking God for the role that he played in that. And I think for the most part, those who believe in God will say that, you know, God just makes it possible, and, you know, we have to do our part. So as long as people feel like they have a controlling aspect in that, it'll be better off. I've gotten to the point where I'm tired of having to write, you know, team of destiny stories, team of fate stories, because it does seem like a cop-out. Every team that wins feels like they're the team of destiny.
Yeah, and remember, you know, Serrano eventually had to set aside Joe Boo when he really wanted to get that home run in the game, so...
Yes, but that's, you know, that's as long as nobody drank Joe Boo's wine, everything was fine.
You know, it's kind of weird. Like, this is, you know, I think to bring it to that level, like, it's a very non-monotheistic way of looking at this. You know, because polytheistic gods, like if you think of like old Greek gods, or you think of Hindu gods, they would do this kind of stuff all the time, like because they had these characteristics that were human-like, but God doesn't seem to care. Like, monotheistic gods don't seem to want to get involved in that. They seem to be more like, let me test you and see if you can kind of remain true, rather than saying, like, I'm going to reward you with a whole bunch of good stuff.
Yeah, in sports, I mean, I can tell you that, you know, being in locker rooms, I'm in locker rooms and I'm around the athletes, and I can tell you that even though they believe in the monotheistic God, they also believe in the idea of, you know, polytheism when it comes to their own individual sports. So there's the one God, the big guy in the sky, but there's also the football gods. And the football gods are not that far down the rung of the ladder for football players than the one true God, because they look at it as being there's something greater than themselves, and they're part of something greater than themselves. And so they don't, you know, they don't actually want to tempt or test the football gods.
Yeah, they seem to be slaves to compulsion. Like, you've done something, and it's true for us fans too. I mean, I have to admit, I was a Bills fan and a Patriots fan in the days of like Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith. And during that Oilers game, you know, I got up and I got out my bass, and I was playing my bass because I'm like, well, I might as well practice. I played that bass every single Super Bowl, man. It never happened again. But every single time they were down, I would get my instrument and I would start playing it, thinking that I could turn things around. It's a compulsion thing. It's more of a compulsion thing. You would know this being near them, that they have to do certain things, and they think that the rules that they create within that compulsion are pleasing the gods or offending the gods even more sometimes. And so they become slaves to it. And you know, it's they're really fickle, but we don't seem to notice when it doesn't work out. We just seem to notice when it works out.
Yeah, that's the history is written by the winners, and so is the history of sporting events. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you know, if the things that you're doing happens for a win and then you don't do it and it's a loss, well, that's definitely what it was. And, you know, there's been millions of pairs of underwear that have gone unwashed over the years for people feeling exactly that same way.
Gross. Direct them to the poop pills.
They don't need them. They've already got every other kind of bacteria going up inside them. But, well, I think we can kind of leave that on the table a little bit here. I think that we've kind of, you know, covered some of these aspects when it comes to the football games. But before we move away from football and into some other paranormal topics, Chris, one more time, you had mentioned, you know, you thought that it was going to be a close score. You said 24-21, or was it, or 27-24?
27-24, I think, is my final.
But do you have a selection for MVP?
I think it's going to be, this sounds really weird, and it kind of fits into what we've been talking about, and that would be, and I'm going to totally mispronounce his name, and I'm going to kill myself for it, but I know he's actually connected to you, and that is Novinsky.
Ninkovich?
Yes, Ninkovich.
Rob Ninkovich, yes.
I have been focusing on him in the playoffs just because he's so high energy, and he has been so close so many times to making these really big plays, and I just feel he is going to have a monster game, and it's going to be a defensive swing, and he's going to be the reason for it. And I'm not just talking like one, I'm talking like one or two huge plays that are going to turn the shift of it, and they're going to say he was the guy that was the star of that. I know that's really weird because it very rarely goes to a defensive player, and even less to a linebacker / rushing lineman. But I honestly think that's my gut. I think he's going to have a huge game.
Well, there's a paranormal connection there. We won't get into it here on the air, but you know there is a connection there. So I can see that fitting. And a defensive player got it last year, so it's possible it happens again this year.
I say it to my wife whenever he makes a play. She goes, "Yes, I know, whatever." So.
So yeah, I want to say hi to Auntie Gail out there, who's probably listening to the show and getting ready for the Super Bowl, and hope she enjoys the game. But I want to move into some other paranormal topics. We have about 25 minutes left in the show, and if anybody has any questions for our guest Chris Balzano, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. But one question I have for you, Chris, is I got involved with the Ghost Stalkers program. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but we didn't really get into it. And I haven't had the chance to ask you what you think about the idea of these portals. I mean, you've researched a lot of haunted places, and it's a topic that has always kind of been out there on the fringe of the research. And now apparently it's mentioned in every episode of Ghost Adventures now, which every Saturday night when a new Ghost Adventures comes on the radio, my phone starts blowing up with Twitter and Facebook messages. Everybody saying, "Are you watching? They're talking about portals again." So it seems like people are finally starting to pay attention to this. But you've noticed in your research over the years that there are vortices out there where strange things happen. I mean, you spent your entire paranormal career in examining one of the biggest ones with the Bridgewater Triangle.
Right. And even if you take the Samuel West house as another example within the triangle of some place that seems to the paranormal activity there seems to extend beyond the things we can explain in terms of people who potentially might have died there, had a connection to it. There's evidence of other people there. There's evidence of people who go in and out of there. And so it would seem to suggest that, there are these areas where things can slip through. And I'm not sure how we measure that. I'm not sure what that means for us. I don't think that, I guess in theory you could say that every time a spirit is seen, there's some kind of portal, because there's something that is beyond our explanation, which is causing an appearance or some kind of happening. But I think that in terms of like a true vortex that allows things to come in and out that don't have a connection to the location. I don't think all paranormal stems from that, but I do think that they exist.
Well, what I liked about researching them is that you got to go beyond just the ghosts, and that's something that we've talked about off the air a lot, is the fact that there's more to the paranormal question than just ghost activity. And we didn't really get into a lot of it on the show on Ghost Stalkers because, the network wants what they want, and they want you to focus on one topic, and the show is called Ghost Stalkers, not, weird goat man stalkers. But there definitely seems to be, especially in the research in the Bridgewater Triangle, there seems to be that door is open for anything to pass through, but we haven't found a way to kind of pass through it from our end.
That we know of.
Right.
I think there, a possible explanation for time slips and lost time is just that we can't remember what we just experienced, that it might touch us on a deeper level, and yet there's this time. Where does this time go? I think that there's paranormal that we perceive on one part of our brain, but not necessarily the entire part of our brain. And so we kind of recollect it. It comes back to us in dreams, comes back to us in these kind of flash memories. So I do think there's a lot of stuff that I do think we've crossed over as well. And I do think that there are moments where you seem to be outside of yourself, but you're not dreaming. Those might be moments where we're crossing. But it's hard to imagine that so many different things can play on the same fields at the same time without there being some kind of opening which is allowing different things through.
Well, I think that we'll see more of that now that it's been paid attention to by some of the television shows. There'll be some more research into that. We'll be interested in seeing where that goes. We do have a call. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say one of the things that has sparked this, some of the research that I'm working on, is the presence of things like shadow men or other unexplained things where there seems to be just kind of like a traditional, straightforward ghost. Especially in terms of like the watching aspect of things, there seems to be things that are observing, watching, crossing over with stuff, or at least kind of documenting the stuff that's there. And so there's so many cases of people who have these little things happen to them, and then they see a shadow figure or something like that. Like one of the shadow men, explained like in the Taunton State Prison, for example, where they seem to be connected only after the fact. Then you start to think of the small other ghostly stuff more realistically because you've now seen this other thing which freaks you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take this call here, and if anybody has a call, if anybody has a question, I'm sorry, for Chris, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. Good evening. You're on Spooky Southcoast.
Yes, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is there any significance to the fact that we talk about these areas as being triangles?
The actual triangle shape themselves?
Yeah, the fact that, you got the, Bridgewater Triangle, you got the the triangle down in the Caribbean, and you got another one out around Japan somewhere, but they're all triangles. Is there a significance to the fact that it's triangular shape?
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a convenient way to do it. You experience things one place, another place, and another place, and you kind of connect the dots, and then you look at what's inside of it. And so I think that a triangle is a very natural way to do that because any three things that occur, you can kind of naturally make a triangle out of it.
No, I mean in the paranormal, is there a significance to, like, is there a certain strength connected to a triangle, or a certain is a portal shaped like a triangle? I don't know, and that's the question I'm asking. Is there some type of significance to the shape of a portal? Or a shape of the area?
I would say in triangles in general have significance. I think it's very interesting. Maybe Tim can talk about triangles and portals. But But I honestly think the majority of the time it comes much more from convenience of like establishing something and then getting it out to people. The Bridgewater Triangle, is not really a triangle if you look at it.
Right.
And the Bermuda Triangle is not really a triangle. It's just 3 convenient locations. And the Bennington Triangle, which is a little bit more contained, could extend easily into, an octagon. So I think there's something mysterious about triangle. So I think it's much more our willingness to kind of be like, oh, that's interesting. It's triangle. It's catchy. Than it is actually about there being some significance to the paranormal stuff that's in it.
I think part of it, Chris, is exactly what you're saying and exactly what you said before, where, to make a shape, you need 3 points at least. When you have 2 and you draw a straight line, that's just a straight line between 2 places. But when you can add that other line and create a shape, now you have it contained, now you have it encompassed. But also I think part of it too is if you look at some of the deities that people worship back in the times of the Egyptians, the Incas, you see all these ancient civilizations, they built pyramids as a way to kind of build upward toward those. So maybe that's why it's kind of ingrained within us as a species to build toward that triangle based on our past. But then another possibility too is one of the things that we explored a bit in Ghost Stalkers is the idea of ley lines, and that a lot of those ley lines will cross over each other and form these triangles naturally. So what you're seeing as a triangle in terms of activity could actually be a triangle as a result of these ley lines.
So it's not really a triangle per se. It's just a reference that we use.
Right. I think certainly in the case of the Bridgewater Triangle, it stopped being a legitimate triangle a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
When it might have started in that, but it certainly seeped its way out, and now it's, the kind of like the, now it's more like the Bridgewater, dodecahedron.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for the call.
All right, thanks for calling.
Again, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. I just think that the fact that we can find these areas where there is a high level of activity and be able to at least give them some kind of a name. And I don't care if you want to call it a triangle, if you want to call it, the whatever rectangle, whatever you want to do, as long as you're paying attention to the fact that for some reason there's an inordinate amount of stuff that happens in these particular locations. And I'm sure, Chris, in your research, both in New England and across the world, you've seen places like that don't fit into that neat description of a geometric shape, but they just seem to have a higher level of high strangeness.
Yeah, it's usually more of, I guess a circle would be, some kind of like blobby circle, because oftentimes there's a heart, and then there seems to be stuff that kind of has that same theme or that same kind of feeling of the heart emulating out. And so I think, even the more that I look at the Bridgewater Triangle, for example, it seems much more that the spirit of the what's going on there seems to emulate more from centers rather than it does as like self-contained or contained within an object or a geometric figure.
Yeah, I think that's kind of just our own desire to. And I think, you have the Bridgewater Triangle that hits the scene first, and then Lauren Coleman even says, he came up with the idea of Bridgewater Triangle because he wanted that connotation to the Bermuda Triangle. So that kind of just lends itself to now it's like, oh, okay, so we're looking for triangles.
Right. And the catchier it can sound, any kind of alliteration you can get as well as, like the Tampa Triangle's caught on quite a bit lately, or, like the woods of such and such, as being someplace. If it sounds really catchy, you're going to get a lot more attention to it. And of course, as writers who expose this stuff, the Beast of Bray Road, as writers who kind of, present this stuff to people, we're looking for that too, because we're looking for the catch. We're looking for the headline. We're looking for the Herald type headline that draws people in as well.
Right. We want to have something that will stick in people's brains and become you can become a legend pretty quickly by just making sure that you stay in the forefront of people's minds. And right. I think that's something that's happened with a lot of these places is, the more that people talk about it, the more it sticks out in their minds. So when they hear other reports, like, oh, well, that must be connected to the Bridgewater Triangle. And
yeah, because, it's New England in general has got so many interesting paranormal things happening and unexplained things happening, that it's easy to kind of like, oh, well, it's just this far away from the Bridgewater Triangle. And I used to make that, leap too, and I would say, I mean, look how many of the pivotal people in the paranormal are just outside the triangle. Like, that's not a coincidence. But maybe it is just more of a coincidence since it's an area of high kind of activity.
Is there are there new triangles that are forming out there? Are there new, places of interest? You mentioned the Tampa Triangle. Are there places that are starting to come together as being new focal points for paranormal research?
It seems to be much more away from that, and to more of a single location getting a nickname.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, it would seem when it comes to like a lot of cryptid sightings. And so it seems more like that's the trend. Like the trend is away from triangles and more towards areas, which could be the influence of portals, back into our paranormal lexicon, if you will.
Which, I'll be honest with you. Like I was really worried using the word portal so much, and it developed into a drinking game. Like legitimately, there's like a Twitter account for the drinking game, for the Ghost Stalkers Portal drinking game. But anyway, I was worried about mentioning it that much just because it was such an unproven commodity in paranormal research, and it was something that was discussed. But how many times have people come up to you and said, "I think there's a portal in my house," and you're like, oh, "Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what it is." But the more that you see that there are these places where there's a high amount of activity, and there's seemingly either way too many causes for it to happen, or there doesn't seem to be a cause for it to happen, you can kind of put your finger on it and say, well, maybe there is some sort of thinning of the veil here, that things can come through back and forth. It doesn't matter who died in this house, because other spirits, other beings from other places can still come through. And I think that's pretty fascinating. And the fact that it kind of was a roundabout way to not have to deal directly with just the idea of ghosts being dead people.
Yeah, I think there are cracks, and kind of any way you look at that crack, whether you think of it as a physical crack that you can evaluate scientifically, if you create a situation for one thing to happen, that also creates a situation for other things to happen. So you take that along with the kind of feeding, observing aspect of things, and you start to get these really multifaceted paranormal activity happening in places.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the other things that I want to kind of get your take on that's happened, we've seen even more of a pop culture explosion around paranormal topics. And, we've talked in the past about how, there was always like the ghost episode of certain shows that we liked. And we've done Spooky Southcoast episodes, we've discussed that. But it seems now like there's more paranormally themed movies, more paranormally themed television shows. It's kind of out there, and it's kind of exploded a little bit more when, a couple of years ago, I remember you and I talking about how, we're probably going to start hitting the waning point now. It's time for it to shrink and time for everybody to go back to what they were doing beforehand. And it seems like it's gone not in that direction, and it's gone more mainstream than we expected.
Right. But I think the average person doesn't connect ghost hunters with Vampire Diaries, for example. And so that explosion, it touches upon the kind of romanticism of the unexplained, of the supernatural, but it doesn't necessarily promote it. Like, my wife is a huge Vampire Diaries fan, but she doesn't like anything vampires.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that because of that diversity, like The Walking Dead, most people don't associate The Walking Dead with anything paranormal, even though zombies kind of fall into that realm. It's paranormal or supernatural depending on how you look at them. And so I think the saturation can happen of ghost shows or of cryptid shows or of UFO shows, but I don't think we'll ever get rid of our fascination with the supernatural.
It's definitely, we were talking before about, you coming up at a time when, the reality aspect of it was starting to hit. So you've kind of got a foot in both aspects of it. What are your thoughts on it becoming more, pop culture and more mainstream? The idea that, some of these topics are infiltrating other parts of the media.
It's definitely weird. at least to me, because I think I want to say even maybe 5 years ago, it was still a strange topic to discuss with people or to tell people like, oh, I'm a medium.
Mm-hmm.
They reacted really badly to it. So now that it's growing the way that it is, and people don't even bat an eye anymore at a commercial for something like Ghost Stalkers or Ghost Hunters or Paranormal Activity 47.
Coming soon to a theater near you.
Yeah. So things like that are just, to me, it's strange because I was brought up to keep it a secret. Don't tell people you could do this. And now it's blowing up to what it is now. And I feel like more and more people are coming out of the woodwork as far as paranormal investigators and all these newfound interests because of reality television, because of the paranormal in the media. It's creating almost like a phenomenon that, those people will always be in their own little group. They won't ever know what it's like to have that passion beforehand. But it's a weird concept to me, I think.
Well, I mean, Chris, looking at it from, as writers, I mean, life revolves around storylines. We have plot lines that carry through into real life all the time, and ghost stories are a plot device that go back to as far back as literature. So it's not a surprise that it actually becomes a plot device in real life as well.
Yeah, and most of the paranormal can easily be metaphor. It can easily be, people understand the topic, or people have exposure to the topic. There's, what we call previous knowledge, fancy term in locking into people's previous knowledge and education. People know a ghost. People know a vampire. People know a werewolf. People know, a boogeyman. And so to use that as a story, you kind of already have the scene set for you. And so people can understand kind of like the story of what's going on or the point that's supposed to get or the theme, or just sit back and be entertained because kind of like those other elements are already in place because people have knowledge of the paranormal topics. And it's interesting to see how pop culture has changed what that knowledge of them is, what people can do. I always point to the student who asked me, well, when you go looking for ghosts, do you have a gun that's got salt in it? Because I guess that's what they were using in Supernatural.
Yes.
And I was like, what? I'm like, well, I've used salt before. I didn't really know what it was for, but I was, kind of using it as a purifying thing and the protection.
Seasoning.
They're like, no, but you got it in your gun? And I'm like, okay, I don't have a gun. I'm in Florida now, but I still don't have a gun.
Well,
so.
I think it sounds to me like you're saying like it's like perfectly okay that we've reached a point now that they're casting Paranormal Naked and Afraid.
That's weird.
Are you asking for my permission?
Did you not get the email? Apparently, everybody in the paranormal got the email. Or
it must have been my Mass Crossroads email.
Exactly. Yeah, I never got it either. I think they don't want to see me naked.
Well, I didn't get one either, so we're not cool.
You got one, Matt? Did you?
Of course you did.
You did get one.
Matt did, not us.
Matt did, not.
Yeah.
Do I think it's okay? I think at a certain point, the gains that paranormal investigators or people who look into the paranormal have gotten from the exposure, I think that tips, and I think that tipped a while ago. To the point where it goes from being, well, you know what, more people are willing to talk about this, to okay, now this has become a parody of itself, and people aren't taking it seriously again. And I think that's as comfortable for people because however much they like a ghost story, they also like to think that ghosts don't exist when it's comforting to them.
Hey, one good thing that can come about from Paranormal Naked and Afraid, if it makes it to television, is that you won't have to worry about anybody hiding a string under their jacket to pull any doors closed or pull any, you know what I mean? Like, there won't. It's going to be a lot harder for them to fake evidence on a show like that when nobody's wearing any clothes.
It's very awkward.
I'm just scared of the specialists that are going on. So how does the specialist in demonology, what's their role in terms of the nudity? Like, what are they going to be doing? Not just the investigating, but are they also going to be going to a library to do research naked?
I think they have to be naked all the time. I'm not sure. I don't know the rules. I've never seen the original Naked and Afraid. So
in the basement
It's
of
funny.
the town hall, looking up old records, wearing nothing but what God gave them. I don't know.
Well, it's just going to make it for a really awkward Dunkin' Donuts run before they go out for the actual investigation.
Or the Chinese food afterwards. Sir, I'm sorry.
Wait, you got Chinese food afterwards?
Oh my word! Almost, like 2/3 of the investigations that I've been on, I've had Chinese food afterwards. That's my go-to.
I'd be lucky if I got cold pizza afterward.
Really?
Well, we are just about out of time with you, Chris. But you talked about you're making your strides back into the field. But what can people look forward to? What's churning in your mind? What do you want to get working on here?
I'm right now the major thing that I'm working on. It's got kind of like a lot of tentacles coming out of it. Is a really true examination of Slenderman.
Nice.
And this other kind of the tide that is the middle school myth. What urban legends are very popular with these, and why has the nature of those urban legends shifted from older and younger to this very, very specific 3 or 4 years of development? Why are urban legends hitting them more than hitting other people?
Well, I definitely look forward to that, and we have not done a show yet on Slenderman, so we'll be expecting you to call in and take part in that once you feel like you've reached that point in your research.
Okay. Well, that's excellent. If anyone has stories, feel free to contact, but not to that old one. So.
Yeah. Well, do you have a new contact email address you want to give out?
My old one, chrisandjenna441@yahoo.com, is still active. As well as trippingonlegends@yahoo.com.
Excellent. So there you go. And, of course, you can always hit him up on Twitter, @SpookyBalzano. That's another great way to do it. And we'll try and make sure, too, that at the very least, if while you're working on some of this research, we'll try and collect some stories here on the show, too, for you to help you out a little bit.
Excellent. You'd actually be amazed at the kinds of stories that are connected to it.
Oh, I've had some discussions with people off the air, and they freak me out for something that is, just completely made up. It's certainly taken on a life of its own. So, but we'll save that for another time.
Yes, we will.
All right. Well, we will talk to you soon, and go Pats.
All right, go Pats. 27-24. That's what I said.
All right,
27-24.
That's what we're holding you to.
All right.
All right. You have a great night. Thanks for joining us.
You too. Thank you very much for having me on.
Welcome back.
Bye-bye.
Good night. That is Chris Balzano. Again, you can check him out on the web, trippingonlegends.wordpress.com, and, of course, on Twitter, @SpookyBalzano. We're just about out of time for this week's show. Stephanie, we have about 20 seconds here. You actually know who next week's guest is?
I do.
This is the start of our, taking a week. Each one of us take a week, and this will be your week next week.
It is my week. So next week we have on my good friend, Lynn Marie, who's a spirit medium and tarot card reader, and she's the owner of Uplifting Connections in Bridgewater, Mass. So I'm looking forward to talking with her about all kinds of different topics.
And we'll be doing some tarot stuff here in the studio.
I think we will be taking readings. Yep.
All right. We'll have to connect that up with Spooky TV as well. So until then, for Matt, for Stephanie, I'm Tim. We want you all to stay spooktacular.
New Bedford News, New Bedford Talk, New England.